Hey everyone, I love the smell of M&A in the morning. You're watching Techstrong Gang. Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel and happy Friday. Wow, this week's going out with a bang. All of a sudden, the deal makers are coming alive. That's what a little boost in the stock market will do for you, right? All of a sudden, everybody's excited. Everybody's looking to spend some money. American confidence at its best or worst, or whatever you want to say. But we've got some interesting deals to talk about. I also want to talk about a conference I was at this week up in Orlando. We've got a core gang today, just three of us. We've got people on the road. We'll get right to it. First of all, not atop the Golden Gate Bridge, but he is back home out in the valley. He's feeling relaxed. Our Silicon Valley editor, John Swartz. Hey, John.
Hello. Yes, I'm a little bit north of San Jose, so I'm kind of right in the middle of Silicon Valley. And I grew up here, and it's nice to be home. Yeah, I grew up in San Jose. It's nice to be back in the cradle of Silicon Valley.
Absolutely. Good to have you on. And then, well, he's not where he grew up. He's probably about 20 miles north of the Bronx, but he's it's close enough. We call it upstate on Long Island. He's our chief content officer. That's sporting a Yankee shirt, Mike Vizard.
Yeah, it's a big sports weekend. We got the Knicks Celtics game tonight, Friday evening, and then it's Subway Series, Mets Yankees all weekend, and I will be at the game Sunday. So
Good for you. I need my Knicks to win tonight, Mike. I don't want to go back to Boston on Game 7, and without Tatum, they really should win this game. We'll see. Anyway, sports is probably on Techstrong TV later. Right now, let's focus on today's stories. Mike, as I said I love the smell of M&A in the morning, and there must be something in the air. What do we got?
Well, M&A is a sport in the Valley, right? So we got Databricks is trying to buy Neon for $1 billion. Neon is a provider of a serverless database platform, which kind of fits into their whole data. I guess I don't know what we're calling them these days, lake houses, whatever, warehouses, whatever seems to be the vogue term of the day. But John, I know you wrote about this, and there's something odd about this particular deal. So explain.
Well, so Databricks announced its intention to buy Neon for $1 billion. And just to put it in context, within the last year or so, Databricks has made $3 billion acquisitions and in this area. So Databricks intends to combine Neon's serverless relational database with Databricks data intelligence services so that the customers can deploy AI agents more efficiently. So this is basically a big push we're seeing in the M&A activity among companies buying AI startups or companies that can help them make it easier for AI agents to work together, because this is becoming a growing concern among enterprises. So essentially, developers and AI bots use this Neon's cloud-based database platform, which is based on, please bear with me, I cannot pronounce it. Is it Postgres SQL?
No, it's Postgres.
Okay.
Postgres is one of the most popular databases in the world.
So yeah, it's been around forever, right? It's been around since maybe the 80s. So this would be used to build apps and websites. So Neon would presumably function as the underlying database for customers that create AI agents with data they store in Databricks platform. That's the idea. I just want to mention two other deals. So last year, Databricks, I spent nearly $2 billion for Tabular, which is a data management startup. And in 2023, it spent $1.3 billion for Mosaic ML, which is an open source platform for training large language models and deploying AI tools. So it's just the latest activity by Databricks, which has also just raised a huge fund, one of the biggest investment funds in the Valley. So they're putting some of that money to use by buying or snapping up these companies.
All right, I'm going to start on this because, first of all, I have a serverless database, and just because somebody threw the phrase AI agents into the press release does not make this an AI agent move. It is basically a serverless database that drives into a data warehouse. Nice piece of tech, been around forever. not exactly net new technology or a net new concept. So I'm already, we're already started, and I'm already sick of all that
Well,
AI.
Mike, it ain't got AI, it ain't got that swing.
Right. And then right. And then the second thing about this, and I'm not saying it's not a good deal or an important deal, but $1 billion under what math? What valuation? Who stood up and said that this thing is worth $1 billion? Because
You don't need math, it's strategic.
I'm thinking that this is an Elon Musk like acquisition, right? A bunch of guys sat in a room. It's
Why, is
full
he
of
just
smoke.
fire everyone and decrease the valuation by
Yeah,
75%?
exactly. So there's nobody out there who says that Neon is worth $1 billion. I just don't
No,
see
but
it.
in today's world, and you slap a little AI on it and a little cha-cha agentic here, agentic there, and it's a bargain at $1 billion. But, I agree with you. It's serverless Postgres, but I do think, my favorite Yankee fan, that you're missing one key piece of this one. This is about orchestration for agentic AI. That's what this is about. I'm going to talk more about it when we get into our thing on the automation anywhere. But the race is on, not just to come out with agentic AI, to come out with AI empowered agents. And what's the difference between an AI agent and an API call? I don't know. I think it depends what PR agency you spoke to. But nevertheless, people are realizing that we're going to have all of these agents running around here, right? And we need an orchestrator. We need something that's going to manage these agents.
I don't doubt that for a
And
second,
this
but
a
Neon is
great
not the provider of
serverless
the
database.
orchestration engine. Neon is Neon is a database access serverless.
Well, no, but they're going to make that. What did our friends at Service Metrics call it last week? The control tower, the control garage, something.
Oh, that was ServiceNow,
They'll
the AI control
their
tower.
name
Yeah.
for it. You
I
know,
to-
you're
I
gonna
totally agree with the requirement. I'm just saying Neon doesn't do that. Neon is
well,
quite.
I think, don't tell me where I am. I want to tell you where I'm going. Uh, I think that's what this is about, is that they have ideation of using a serverless Postgres database that could then run, serverless anywhere, um, to be their AI orchestrator, their AI garage.
The other part of this that's also kind of nonsensical is Postgres is a relational database for structured data, and everything that drives AI is unstructured data. So again, people are throwing around AI like it's magic,
Well,
and
but
just
but they're not. I don't think they're looking to host LLMs or anything in here. They just want to host an
they just
agent
want they,
orchestrator.
they just want a database that scales up and down on demand. Full stop. I agree with the need, but all this other nonsense is just that nonsense.
Well, I mean, everything is through the prism of AI. I mean, this is what they do. It's all about, and Alan's right, it's about orchestration of AI agents. And they're gonna twist and mangle and reinterpret what they're doing to appeal to the market. And I mean, for all what is it, Neon is revenue is minimal. This is almost
Yeah,
like
no, this
the
this wasn't a multiple deal. This wasn't based on revenue multiples. Here's the deal. I don't even. I think. Look, data Databricks basic business, their real business that allows them to do all these billion-dollar deals you referenced, John, is they're a data lake manager, right? They manage data. And using AI-empowered agents to manage data is not a dumb thing to do. It's probably a smart thing to do going forward. So if you are going to develop all these AI agents, and some of these AI agents are going to be ephemeral, they're one-time users, they're like disposable. Others will be persistent, and you got to house them somewhere. So it makes sense to say, okay, what database are we going to use to house these agents and to manage these agents? Now, but let's get away from that a second. You mentioned, John, Postgres, you were a little unsure how to pronounce it.
yes.
I've been following Postgres market. You know, at one time there was MySQL and there was Postgres, two more popular open source databases you never saw. right? Both of these were huge, huge. Now, MySQL managed to get Larry Ellison White to take his checkbook out. Martin and the rest of the guys over at MySQL made out pretty damn good. MySQL is still a force in the market, but you know what? If you watch what Postgres has done since the MySQL acquisition by Oracle, Postgres filled that vacuum of people who said Oracle and open source databases are they don't fly, right? That's oxymoron. And so the Postgres ecosystem blew up. Neon was one of those players who basically had their own Postgres distribution. Their shtick was it's serverless. There are a lot of Postgres distributions and a lot of companies that make their money hosting Postgres, servicing Postgres, offering it as a SaaS kind of solution or database as a service. Neon's one of those in serverless. So look, to get $1 billion for basically someone who is porting an open source database onto a serverless platform, I don't care what their revenue is. Bravo. Bravo to the Neon people. Whatever they sold, whatever bill of goods they sold these people about agents and AI and anything else, God bless them. $1 billion is $1 billion.
So here's the part I do like about this deal, right? We've been talking about trying to connect databases and DevOps forever, and it's always been a disconnect. But if the database is serverless and you can call it through an API, then it becomes a lot easier to manage the database within the context of a DevOps workflow. So I think that's going to be kind of one of the bigger benefits of that. And is somebody going to put an AI agent on top of Postgres and make it easier for me to do that? Probably, but that's not quite the same thing as saying I'm going to be the center of the AI agent universe.
I don't know if it's going to be the whole AI agent universe, but I think it's going to be Databricks. Every one of these companies is developing multiple agents. As I said before, some will be disposable, some will be persistent, but and they're not like a robot that does 15 different tasks. They're all of these agents are basically like they do one thing. So yeah, Databricks may see themselves, developing dozens of different agents for dozens of different tasks that you do as part of your data management. And those might be in Postgres. I'm sorry, go ahead, John.
Oh, no, that's okay. ServiceNow kind of hinted at that when they announced the AI control tower. They basically said, as you alluded to, Alan, there are going to be agents that are going to do specific tasks. Maybe they are temporary tasks, and they're going to be slotted in and out, and be swapped in and out. And those who don't, and the AI agents that don't perform as well as other will just be plucked out and replaced by something else.
Look, what's the lifespan of the average container in a cloud native deployment? Seconds. Seconds. They're spun up and spun down and spun out, and new ones take their place. They're ephemeral. And that's why you need something like Kubernetes to orchestrate and manage these things. It's the same thing here.
I think it's going to play out more like this. The agents that ServiceNow is creating, or Salesforce, or any of these folks, is going to have to invoke a large amount of data to go take whatever action they're going to be in. They're going to go get that data from Databricks, and they may talk to another agent to pull that data. And that's going to be crucial because you need to do that at a really low latency because these processes are going to be running in near real time. And so that part of the thing makes a lot of sense to me. I just think, the database company should just stand up and say, we need a lot faster databases instead of AI wash and everything they do.
Yeah, this, I think, going forward, Mike, I think we're going to see more instances of this. We already have. We're just going to see an acceleration of deals, and they're going to slap the AI moniker on the deal regardless, what the underpinnings are of that deal. And it's going to I think it's only going to escalate.
This reminds me when CRM was the rage and somebody came out with a CRM laptop, right? It was just easy.
Right. It's just, it's history repeating itself, really. In terms, and also in terms of these deals, in terms of the money, the dollar signs allotted to some of these deals. I mean, some of them are just kind of fictional, in my opinion. I always go back to Stargate. That just to me, they're having problems raising enough money for that to even reach 1/10 of what they want to what they want to raise.
Absolutely.
So how much of this deal do you think Databricks is still private? Is that the deal? Right?
Yeah,
The-
they haven't
Databricks,
valued. I
yes,
think they're
they
more.
raised market.
Yeah, they just raised like $10 billion, so they're valued at like at 62 billion, but they're still private.
Oh yeah, no, they. You know what? I'm not 100. I'm now all of a sudden I'm thinking there was a Databricks IPO at one point. Let me just gonna give a quick look here, but I mean,
I think that they've signaled that their intent is to go public, but I wonder if they're going to be like the next big roll up vehicle in the valley where all these startups are just going to get rolled up into Databricks and then they all go public, quote unquote, together.
well, as long as the stock market is as choppy as it is, and the IPO market doesn't appear to be open to tech companies, one may say you're better off being private if you're, and use your you got an outrageous valuation, right? And use that as currency to buy these
Right.
companies.
Right.
Was it a billion in cash or a billion in stock, did they say?
No. And the thing that's interesting too is that a lot of these startups, this is your exit strategy, right? In this case of Neon, this is your exit
Oh,
strategy
sure.
when
I mean,
the
if you're
IPO
Neon,
market is yeah, it's a no brainer. Like the IPO market is just not moving
closed.
for tech company. It's not even close. So
It's
it's for both
closed for
sides. It's
winter.
yeah. So for both
Look, if you
sides,
would
this
have
is
told
the
the
logical
founders
thing.
of Neon if you would have told the founders of Neon 7, 8 years ago that, hey, all this messing around with Postgres and a serverless version of Postgres is going to get you $1 billion, they would ask you to pass over whatever you were smoking. Let's face it. You would have told them, and by the way, that $1 billion is going to be based upon your capabilities around AI agents. They would have looked at you like you were crazy. But that's the world we live in today. So congratulations to them, as I said.
All right, roll up in database aisle 8.
Yeah.
The year of agentic AI, cash in while
It
you can.
strikes again. But let me just strike one more familiar tone that I always take, which is the lesson I learned from Brad Feld. If you're not in the top 3, get out. So if you're in that Postgres database market, here was number 1. Neon just hit it for $1 billion. Take if you want to be number 2 or 3, or get out. That's where you are. Let's take a break here on the gang. We're going to come back and we're going to talk. Are we talking automation anywhere next?
We are.
All right. I'm excited. I hope you're excited. We're watching Techstrong Gang.
Hey, folks, we're back with one of our field reports. Alan was up in Orlando at an event hosted by Automation Anywhere. They're talking about the future of what we used to call robotic process automation, but it's got a whole new spin and a whole new vibe. Alan, give us the deal.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah. First of all, I love going to events in Orlando because we just get in the car, we drive up there. It's easy peasy. I drove up Tuesday, spent the day, spent Wednesday, stopped in on some of our Futurum pals who are over at a Click Connect event. And I got home late last night. But Automation Anywhere. Look, for those of you who aren't familiar, Automation Anywhere is a 20-year-old company. I had a chance to sit down with their CEO, Meher Shukla, and he's co-founder and CEO. He's been obviously there all 20 years. Meher has had several exits prior to starting Automation Anywhere, but this guy's truly a visionary. For all intents and purposes, Automation Anywhere invented the robotic process automation, right? We had business process automation, BPA. They invented sort of, or at least put it on the map, RPA. And the BPA, RPA market, it's kind of aligned with that whole low code, no code thing. It's about automating processes. But now, I don't know how many of you remember the old STP commercials when we were little. Put a little STP additive in the gas tank, and boy, you all of a sudden your car's a muscle car. Well, you put a little AI, agentic AI in your RPA, and all of a sudden you're driving a 1968 GTO with a six pack sticking out the hood. You know, this thing takes off like a rocket. And that's what they've done. They've credit to the Automation Anywhere folks. They've reinvented themselves. RPA is so 1999 or 2009 or whatever. It's APA, agentic process automation. And
I remember when we talked about RPA was like the next great AI, but what happened in time was that people discovered that it was really good for automating a closed loop process, but everybody had a process that had, more exceptions than rules, and then the RPA stuff started to fall apart. Gen AI though allows you to handle the exceptions better.
you hit it. Now all of a sudden I could deal with the exception. I could be a little more autonomous. I could bring a little more intelligence to this. And that's exactly what it is. I in addition to Meher, I spoke with Adi Kurumandi, who's their CPO, Chief Product Officer. I spoke with Micah Smith, who's their Chief Community Developer Community. And then I had a chance to speak with a key customer of theirs, a company called Alight. Alight works for many, many health insurance companies. When it's open enrollment, we've all been through this, right? It's open enrollment season. You got to go click on, what coverage you want, what dental you want, which plan you want, what this is, what that is. And Mike, that's exactly the closed loop type of business process that was made for RPA. Right. Another one, our friend Martin Logan, when he was at Guaranteed Rate Mortgage in Chicago, doing a mortgage application. Also, kind of that closed loop that's perfect for RPA. But now with APA, and all that brings, this is opening a whole new vista to how we can automate work. And Maher has a great vision for this about freeing a little Star Trekky, but freeing humans up to do things that humans like to do and are worthwhile and are gratifying. Um, Here's another thing, though, and it goes back to our previous discussion here, guys. They are creating something that they are calling, straight out calling, an orchestration layer. Because they say, and Maher told me this, and their chief product officer told me this, they don't care whether you're using some agents from Salesforce, as well as some agents from ServiceNow, as well as maybe some agents for Automation Anywhere, and agents from any other apps you're using as part of your business processes. Right? All of these agents are going to need to be orchestrated. And, is ServiceNow is going to orchestrate all of the ServiceNow ecosystem agents, right? From our report last week or earlier this week. Salesforce is going to have its own stable of agents. Automation Anywhere says we'll manage anybody's agent, right? Because no company is going to have just one company's agent. We're all going to have dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of agents. And so someone has to orchestrate that whole thing as it relates to business processes and as it relates to business process automation. And it's big. I think they're on something.
I think they're onto something. I'm becoming a little dubious of all these claims where somebody says that they're going to be the orchestrator. I think that there will be multiple orchestrators and gateways between them to hand off different processes, because everybody wants to be the boss, but they can't all be the boss. But nobody's going to let one company become the dominant orchestrator. So I think we're kind
I
of
don't
gonna.
think anyone's going to let one company do it any more than anyone let Kubernetes do it. Right? But yet Kubernetes became the dominant orchestrator in cloud native.
Yeah, but most of what people are running still is monolithic apps that Kubernetes has no control over whatsoever. So, you know,
Oh, Mike, you didn't get the news. Everyone's modernizing because of VMware licensing.
yeah, I was just up here in New York on that. It's a separate topic altogether. But I asked somebody what percentage of your apps are cloud native, and they went 20%, and what percent are mission critical, and they went 2%. So,
There is that. There is that. But nevertheless, you look at this company, 20 years old. They kind of are reinventing themselves right before our eyes here. Jumping as we talked about later. If it ain't got that AI, it just ain't got the thing. And so they clearly are bringing AI into this, and in their particular business case, it's not pie in the sky. It's not slick selling. I do think that AI in the form of AI agents, especially, um, really are the STP fuel additive to RPA because it gets you out of. It allows you to have a wider swatch of business processes that you could deal with that aren't all that closed loop, you know, A to B to C to D kind of thing. If you got to branch out this way, branch out that way, whatever, this sort of intelligence really makes a huge difference.
you know what I find interesting too, and maybe I don't know, John, out in the valley, usually there's startups that say that they're going to be the next greatest thing around this AI agent orchestration, and yet the legacy players have all seemed to like close down their flank pretty quickly and say that they were going to be the orchestrator. So I don't know. Are you hearing any noise in the valley about orchestration as for agents as kind of the next startup, or is it just something that I
Yes,
got to be
that I
established to
was.
drive?
Yeah, that's a really good point, Mike. I'm starting to hear that. Yes. So yeah, what you have, as you said, and what Alan said, you have Salesforce, ServiceNow, Informatica, go down the line, right? They all want to be the end all be all orchestrators, which I believe no enterprise or a few enterprises in the right mind are going to be beholden to one company for that responsibility. So they're going to be looking for multiple types of orchestration and maybe somebody who ties it together. And I think that as you're hearing murmurs that in terms of orchestration of like if the possibility of a startup or someone filling that void, which is an incredibly important void, which will be the next wave. I mean, we're going through all these little mini waves and AI in general. Now we're in the agentic wave. Now we're drilling down to the orchestration, but it's not going to be one company offering all the solutions. I think there is an opening for someone to kind of fill that gap.
You know, I asked their CPO a very pointed question. What's the difference between an AI agent and an API call? Right now, look, the internet runs on API calls, right? Something like I forgot what it is, 57%, 62% of all traffic on the internet is API to API kind of call. Um, I mean, and I'm not trying to be cute. I don't do cute. But what is the difference between agentic AI and API calls?
Hardly anything, and I'll go you one better. If you take apart the model context protocol, you will find an implementation of gRPC with JSON attached to it to do the description. But that wasn't sexy, so they called it MCP and made it out to be like this great advance for integrating all those AI agents that are essentially just going to wind up making API calls to
I mean,
legacy applications.
especially these ephemeral, single use, relatively simple, just, hey, do this. There's not a lot of intelligence built into it. I want to bring up one other piece of my conversation with Meher, though, because I enjoy listening to Meher. I enjoy listening to smart folks. We spoke about, general artificial intelligence, right? GAI, the sort of holy grail, the singularity that we're all, supposed to be waiting for, because that's when Skynet comes in and decides carbon-based life forms are no longer necessary, right? Um, he says that maybe pie in the sky, it may not be pie in the sky, but there is sort of a general AI type of AI that is gonna be used in business processes automation. And Mike, to your point about what held RPA back, it's not that RPA was a failure, mind you, right? I mean, a lot of industries use it extensively. But what held it back was that ability to kinda think outside the box, to make a left when it had to make a left, and make a right when it had to make a right, and know when, right? You can't rule out, you can't just have rules for everything, it's gotta have some autonomy and intelligence. And that, to Mahesh, is sort of general artificial intelligence as it relates to process automation, and that's really what they're shooting for. They made another announcement around that up in Orlando, and I think that is something that bears watching.
Yeah, I think other people are kind of coming up with a flavor of general artificial intelligence where they're not saying it's full boat
Well,
GAG,
that's what
but
he's doing too.
they're saying that within the confines of a narrow set of tasks, we have achieved some general intelligence. I don't know. I'd like to actually see that work. I've seen, people talk about it in demos, but business processes are funky that way. They tend to need to be done the same way every time. And if there's an AI agent that is, probabilistic, they may not do it the same way every time. So you got to really understand how to implement that. I think as we go along, you're going to see a mix of probabilistic and deterministic processes that people are going to have to mesh together. And this requires, enterprise expertise and a lot of work. So it's not going to happen overnight, but it's going to happen.
I agree. I agree. Um, Let me close out this segment with just two quick announcements. So the interviews that we did up in Orlando, we didn't do those live. Um, in addition to the article, that there was two articles. One is on Techstrong AI, one is on DevOps.com. But the videos will be up, I believe, on Monday on Techstrong TV, so you'll be able to see them there. They'll be part of the Monday show, as well as available on our OTT channel and Techstrong TV. And I did mention the Click Connect conference, where I ran into some of our Tech Field Day brethren from Futurum, as well as Guy Courier. Um, that, I believe, will also be up next week. They didn't broadcast live from there, but it'll be up.
We'll get a report from Guy next time he's on the show. And we'll make sure we.
Oh, we'll do it justice. All right. So from Automation Anywhere to Techstrong TV here, let's take a break. We'll be back with more M&A news and more M&A news. All right. Oh, man, I feel like it's apocalypse now. You're watching Techstrong Gang.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
Hey folks, we're back and we're talking about open source and robotics because there was a move by Hugging Face that maybe didn't get the attention it deserves, at least in my opinion, but they bought a company that's going to allow them to share with other folks open source hardware and presumably software that will be used to build various classes of robots. Now, John, this is your story and you covered it, but I think something big is afoot here.
Yeah, no, I thought it was very interesting. So Hugging Face bought this company, or plans to buy a company called Pollen Robotics, which is based in France. They're the people who developed something called Ricci 2, which is a $70,000 bot that's used for academic research at Carnegie Mellon and Cornell University, as well as they test embodied AI applications. The reason why it's interesting is Hugging Face's purchase of Pollen I think arguably marks its first step into selling hardware after it enhanced or buoyed its robotic software capabilities last year. And there was a key hire by Hugging Face. They hired a former researcher on Optimus humanoid in March 2024. His name is Remy Cadine. And they also later launched Les Robots, an open source robotics library code. So I think, as in the words of Hugging Face co-founder Thomas Wolfe, he said that robotics is going to be the next frontier that AI will unlock. He said that having AI embodied in robotics might help solve challenges to achieve human-like AGI, or artificial general intelligence. So I think it's very interesting and kind of moving forward with the applications could mean in terms of use of humanoid robotics in various capacities.
Alan, I think we've seen this play before. Proprietary folks start something, and then the open source community kind of jumps in behind it. And the next thing you know, stuff is everywhere because, well, the total cost of actually doing something dropped through the floor. So is open source going to do it again?
Absolutely. And there's always a place for open source models within the various tech, silos, if you will. What couple of interesting things. Number one, this is a move from Hugging Face, not just into robotics or hardware, but into, as we call it, or as Jensen Huang calls it, right? Physical AI, right? Which is after agentic AI, it's the next great frontier, physical AI. Marrying AI to physical devices, whether you want to call them robots, IoT devices, what have you. They're real, device. It's physical. It's not just software. Now, you want to call that hardware? Okay, I think in the case of a robot, it's hardware, but is your refrigerator going to be hardware? Because that's going to you'll be AI enabled. Now, the other interesting thing here is this is a case of a company that has open source hardware. Open source hardware is not as popular as open source software, right? A lot of people have a hard time getting their heads around the concept of open source hardware. What the heck is open source hardware anyway? Well, basically, they're printing schematics, they're printing the blueprint, or not printing. I'm so old. We don't print anything anymore. They're making available the schematics and the blueprint so that you could build this hardware yourself. We see it with some CPU, type of semiconductors. They're open source design. And this was a company, I remember when they were first launching, their idea was if they could get everybody building this robot because we open source the design for it, and then they offered better software for the robot or additional functionality, maybe a removable arm that does some specific task that's not in the open core open source hardware, right? It's the same principle as the software now with the hardware. So now one has to ask themselves, okay, so Hugging Face is buying a company that makes an open source hardware robot that anyone can make theoretically. Does Hugging Face think they're going to make it cheaper, better, faster? Maybe. But why are they really doing it? Because they think they could put better software in it. And now the question becomes, look, I own this open source hardware IP, but anybody could make it. But anybody who makes it should use my software.
It's kind of like the ARM processing model, right?
Very much is the ARM model. That's why I said semiconductors.
You get the design and you can manufacture it, and then you can use any model you want from the AI side and put it into the robot. it's interesting to me. I was having this chat with this fellow who was testing some robots in a warehouse. He was saying, it kills them because, um, it's $500,000 to get the robot, get it all set up and tested, and it falls down a flight of stairs, and it doesn't get up, and B, it breaks. And so they're like, we need a cheaper way to do this because, physical AI is far from perfect, and it's still trial and error.
Yeah. I mean, but again, much like back to our previous conversation on agentic process automation, we've been playing with robots for decades, right? We've all seen the latest advances. The dog runs really fast. It doesn't fall over as much. I mean, most of our factories, Teslas, iPhones, they're built by, very single use, single dedicated type of functionality, but they're robots. Not all robots have to be humanoid. This particular one is, right? And we will get to the point where we need to discuss how human do we want our humanoid robots to be, right? It could get a little freaky, unless there'll be an adult industry that, of course, will want them very human, but such as humanity, unless these new pornography uh, laws come in being, and then you're not allowed to mention that stuff anymore. But I digress. Back to humanoid robots. Um, the key here is what who's really going to manufacture them? How much does it cost to really make a quality robot, even if I already have the blueprints?
Mhm. I'm assuming that, I guess we'll have to have a Made in America robotics campaign, but right now, the Chinese are projecting that they're going to turn out these robots in the millions. So I think they're building the plants already.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they're far ahead of us. It's interesting. I was talking to somebody at Amazon about a week or two ago about this concept, and they came out with something called Vulcan, which they're going to use kind of a robotic arm on the assembly line. But he was talking. This is an executive. He was talking about the challenges of implementing humanoid robots. So I imagine something like this, and then the overarching comments of Jensen about physical AI. I mean, we're all kind of moving in the direction of how do you bring the cost down? Because I think Rishi too is like I mentioned 70,000. That's a major issue here is bringing the price down and bringing the efficiencies and specialization. So it's at the start. We're far behind the Chinese, but at least it's a start, and that's why I think it's interesting and significant.
Sure is. Sure is. Look, I think I see a robot in your future, Mike.
I do too.
Out batting cleanup for the New York Yankees.
I
Number
just can't
stop,
figure out if it's.
09.
I just can't figure out if this is a robot that's helping me or chasing me because I have both dreams.
Again, that might be illegal under Project 2025. Don't go too far into it. But can we have robotic boxers, MMA fighters, robotic baseball players?
Yeah, and how do I bet on robots? Because if they're both equally skilled, then they'll just beat each other to a pulp, and then there'll be a draw. So like FanDuel's out of business.
Wasn't there a movie with Sylvester Stallone managing like a beat up robot? I don't remember the name of it, but yeah. Robotic football players who don't get brain injuries.
I think the remake of that is going to be any day now. It's going to be called Robo Rocky 27.
Robo Rocky. How about Rocky Robo?
Either one.
Maybe we could sell that for $1 billion right here on Techstrong Gang. All right, we're getting silly. It's Friday afternoon.
As long as you mention AI in the first paragraph of the press release, I think you're gold.
Well, the robots can't work without AI. Otherwise, they're just dumb robots.
You're killing me, John. You're killing me.
Sorry.
All right. Hey, John, Mike, have a great weekend. Mike, enjoy that Subway series. Let's hope Judge keeps hitting like he's hitting. Let's hope our Knicks win tonight. John, it's no joy in Mudville for the Dubs out there in Silicon Valley.
I know. It was was hard to watch,
Well,
but I
once
mean,
Perry gets hurt, it's over for
when
you
you're so
anyway.
dependent on one
Um,
player, this is going to happen.
It happens. Listen, we've got a lot of Techstrong TV coming your way right after today, though. So this week isn't over yet. Stay tuned for that. But we will be back Monday with probably more M&A news and more AI news and agentics and robots and Yankees and Lions, Tigers, and Bears. Oh my. Have a great weekend, everyone. This is Alan Schimmel. We're out.